change audio input. Yeah, sorry about that. Something weird was going on. It was asking
I,
me for a code.
I think that was my fault. I think I must have forgot to uncheck that part. So I
Oh,
apologize on that, man.
uh,
Let me know when you're ready to go.
okay. Let's see. It looks like I am now connected to my interface. Perfect. I'm
All
good.
right. All righty. Well, hey, Stefan, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me
Yeah,
this
no
afternoon.
problem.
Congratulations on yeah, I know this. I think the soundtrack releases tomorrow, right, for Batman: Doom King of
Yes.
Gotham,
Yeah, it is.
on digital. So that's very exciting. I think this is your first, like, or like from soup to nuts, right? Like you did everything in terms of the score for this project. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be my first studio release
Mhm.
album, which I'm really excited about, and I hope everyone loves it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because
I mean, I loved how it set really the tone for the film. You know, like it really kind of,
thank you.
and we'll dig into this a little bit, but like, you know, it felt like Batman, but it didn't feel like Batman that I've heard before. You know, and
Oh,
that's got to be hard to do because Batman scores are almost always iconic. You know, like I had,
mhm.
you know, one of my best friends. Whenever you drive around in his Xterra, he always blasts the Tumblr theme, you know, from Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But it's like that sort of thing. Like Danny Elfman's scores are all legendary, and so, but for you to have to craft a score that's kind of unique to that movie is really really hard, and I think you nailed it out of the park. So
Oh, well,
congratulations on that.
thank you. That was my
Yeah,
goal. I really wanted to, because there's so many amazing composers attached to this franchise. I still wanted to provide that sound world that we're all familiar with, but
yeah,
like something completely different since it's its own thing, like you were saying. So I'm glad
yeah.
that that happened.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you come to be a professional musician and what inspired your passion to pursue music composition as a career? Has this been something you've been doing since you were a kid and you just wanted to keep going with it? Give me a little bit of background here.
Yeah, so I grew up as a classical musician all my life and still play professionally. And so I started playing when I was around, I think like, I don't know, between 7 to 9. I can't
Mhm.
remember.
Let's call it
And
8.
yeah. And I started in the orchestra playing viola. And at that time, my teacher, I was like super inspired by just classical music in general. And my family, being from a Black family, we don't listen to that much. So I was the only oddball in the house blasting Bach when I was younger while they were blasting the Temptations. And I just surrounded myself with that music, and my orchestra teacher saw that I kind of had some inspiration to start writing when I was very young. So I think I was around maybe 10 or 11 where I asked her if I could write a piece for the orchestra, and she said sure. So at the time the program had started updating their computers and everything, so they got Finale, which is a notation software, and she would just let me go in there during orchestra and just write things. So then I just started getting commissions when I was about 10 years old. And she traveled with me from junior high school orchestra all the way to high school. And so I just ended up writing music all throughout that time for string orchestra, for full orchestra, for quartet, and also at the time we had some musicians like deficit of musicians in the orchestra. So she's like, hey, you want to play bass? You want to learn violin? So it just gave me this like practicum of like how to write for
Sure.
orchestra. And then at the time as well, I started getting so engrossed by like film music, specifically like James Horner, John Williams, like the score from Titanic, and Jerry Goldsmith, The Mummy, and all the Star Wars, and all those, and Hook,
Yep.
E.T., you know. And I was like, man, I want to do this, but frankly, I didn't see anyone who looked like me in that forum, like everyone was very much a white composer,
Mhm.
and it didn't seem like it was much of a reality until I just really decided in college. I went off to music school at DePaul University, and I decided to major in performance because I knew that was practical, and then also major in composition. And it's funny because I was the only person in my department for composition who was actually interested in film music.
Sure.
So there was a director that visited the school and was like, hey, I need somebody to write a score. Is there anyone in the composition department that's interested? And everyone said no. And I was like this freshman who was like, sure, I'll do it, And so that's how I got my first short film. It was actually a jazz score for a film called Death of Noir. I had never written for jazz in my life. I was very much classical, but fortunately, DePaul has one of the top jazz programs in the country. So I was like surrounded by excellent musicians who kind of like showed me the ropes about it. And then that ended up leading to sophomore year getting a feature film to score, all while, taking lessons, orchestra rehearsals, practicing, writing, classes, and just so my whole life has just been kind of balancing this performance route and the writing route. So yeah, I guess that's a long-winded answer, but that gives you some in-depth into my life.
Sure, sure. And so, I mean, yeah. So at the same time, though, are you a fan of? Obviously, I see a picture of Woody on your wall. So, are you a big fan of animation specifically? And are are you a fan of any properties that you could share, either from growing up or even now today? Are you do you watch a lot of animation?
Yeah, I mean, I love animation because you can take risks that you can't in live action,
Mhm.
Animation is a very involved process when it comes to just creating the film all the way down to the music.
Yeah.
So I am interested in getting more into live action work as well, but animation also always holds a spot in my heart. These photos, or I guess the artwork in back of me is actually my partner's. He's a fine artist and he
Oh,
specializes in stippling pointillism work. So
oh
all of
wow.
these are made up of extremely tiny dots from a ballpoint pen.
Oh
That
wow. That's
Yeah, so
excellent.
when you zoom into it, it's very it's just kind of mind blowing to see how he
Sure.
can. I don't know how the hell he does it, but it just amazes me. So this is like our little creative hive. I sit here, write music, and he's over there doing his artwork and stuff. So,
Very cool. Very cool. So,
but
so
I forgot to
yeah.
answer that question about
Yeah.
properties because I know you were asking that.
Mhm.
I I mean, I don't know if there's a specific property, but I would say studios that I'm drawn to are definitely like Disney, animation, Warner Brothers. I'm interested in Marvel. I mean, anything that's action, adventure, and epic, I'm all for. That's like
Gotcha.
where my sound world is. And so, and yeah, so I would love to work with any of those studios.
Yeah, and of course, you got to work with a great studio with the people at DC Comics. How did you hook up with them, so that you would ultimately land the job of scoring for the Doom that came to Gotham?
It's interesting because back when the everything closed during the pandemic, there was an
Yeah.
app called Clubhouse that became
Mhm.
very popular for the industry because everyone, frankly, was bored at home. So it gave everyone a way to kind of communicate, network, and also cut out the gatekeepers that are traditional in those situations. And at that time, there was a room where they were discussing things about changing, assets of the film industry, specifically about being more, focused on diversity and inclusion. And I was just talking on stage um, in the app about, how there's a deficit in that area behind the lens as well, specifically for composers when you go on. And I record professionally in the recording studios regularly in the orchestras. And so in my 15 plus year of experience, it's only till like now that I'm starting to see people who look like me on the recording stage, and also on the podium and in the booth. And so I'm happy that Hollywood is finally starting to open up those doors.
Yeah.
But I met Sam Liu actually through Clubhouse. And so
Mhm.
the director of the film, and we were talking a little bit. He liked what I had to say, and he listened to my music and passed it up the ranks to get approval. And then I got a phone call, or actually a message, a DM from him really late at night. I can't remember what time it was. And he's like, hey, I want to chat with you for a second. And we got on there and had an audio chat. And he's like, I'd love to offer you this project. And I lost it because it's an amazing opportunity.
Sure.
especially to be my first studio credit,
Mhm.
so I'm
Yeah.
very excited for it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, because there is a wide spectrum of classical music, and you have cheerier efforts, like your Mozart, your Rossini's, and stuff like that. And then this film definitely seems to be more rooted in like the more darker, you know, efforts, stuff that you might hear from like Bachner and stuff like that. So was that like an easy transition for you? Were you always a fan of the cheerier stuff, and then maybe having to transition to something that's really, really dark that that takes hold in a much, obviously the Lovecraftian, I should say, roots of the story.
Mhm.
What was that like to try to, kind of have your personal interest in the type of music you listen to, but then also compose something for the film?
Well, I wanted to take a really unique approach because the film's set in the 1920s. And
Yeah,
for me, that sound is kind of a dated orchestral sound, like the strings are up front in your face and you can hear every little bow noise. And so I wanted to go back to those old Hollywood type scores while mixing that new sound that we're all very accustomed to today. So inspiration, you were spot on, is definitely like light motives used by, or that technique used by Wagner, and deeply romantic type of scores, in the classical sense. And then
yeah,
also my inspirations film score wise were, the Batman legends. So there's
sure,
Danny Elfman, Elliot Goldenthal, Shirley Walker, who's very underrated, who's incredible, no longer with us, but did all, the animated series. And obviously James Newton Howard and Hans Zimmer,
mhm,
so I think it was important to include that sound world even in this, because it helps the audience become familiar, like this is a Batman film, but adhering to the period element of it, I felt it needed that old school kind of sound too. So,
sure,
and like to let personally, there wasn't a lot of time to actually record the orchestra or anything like that
sure,
because of the time frame. And so
yeah,
everything you heard was played by me and
mhm,
programmed by me at my
that's awesome.
computer.
Yeah.
So,
That's
over
crazy.
90 minutes of music in the film, basically from front to back, all music. And so, yeah, it was a huge task. And thanks to my assistants, they were incredible. Krista and Jamie, I owe them my life. They
So how
helped
long
me.
did that take to put together the score? Like, because you mentioned you had to do every single, piece of it. What was that time frame like?
I'm trying, I get asked this question a lot, but when you're in the moment of it, it just literally you can't, like, you lose track of time. I feel like
Yeah,
it takes a few weeks with the director in general to just establish the tone, kind of figure out what our sonic Bible is. And so
yeah,
I think once we got hit the ground running and figured out the tone, I had basically about a month and a half,
mm,
maybe 2 months
wow,
to write the entire score. And that's including revisions. And because there's several previews in the process, so each
yeah,
act has its own preview, then there's notes, there's revisions, and then from that point you have to keep writing and
yep,
revise,
yeah,
so that's why a lot of these composers have massive teams. And my team was pretty small in this project, but I think we did an incredible job in the time that was allotted.
yeah,
It was a lot of music written. I would say probably close to 2.5 hours of music,
wow.
with the revisions included on top of that. So, yeah, so not a lot of time,
I was
but I
gonna
think
say
we did a good
that
job.
that sounds like a lot of late nights and cold pizza. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, lots of late nights, definitely not getting sleep sometimes, and burning the midnight, or what is the phrase, burning the midnight oil, I guess.
yes, yes,
um but that's part of the process. And I feel like a film like this, because it's so dark, it even aided to the creation of the score, because there are
being up
moments
at
where,
night, right? Yeah,
yeah, late at night, low energy, and it just kind of pours all of your emotions out. And
yeah,
at points, it felt like the score was writing itself,
sure.
so it's a long, laborious process, but at the end of it, you get to say, damn, I did that. you know,
Sure.
like, so.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you touched on before the differences between composing for live action and animated. So, what, you know, go into a little more detail about what those differences are, and then do you think that that producing the score is more dependent on the project rather than the aesthetic, or do you think it really is like the presentation that the most important part of the piece?
Well, I mean, I think, well, I'll answer the first part of it. So the difference between live action animation usually starts way ahead of time with the composer because there's so many timing issues. They're creating animatics, which is something we usually get, which is very bare bones video, footage of what they'd like to do. And then from there, we move, they go on to animating, and then slowly they roll out the different reels for me to start scoring to. But sometimes that's not even finished. So there are times where in animation, the composer may not even see the final product until it actually is released,
Sure,
So
sure.
it's on you as a composer to create this world and make sure it marries to the film as best as it can, and fortunately in this situation, animation had the process had been going on. So the reels that I received were very much close to what was going to be used. Besides some timing things, because I think the total runtime of the film before they had to make another edit was around 100 minutes. And they had to cut at least 10 minutes out of it. So from that, the music gets, affected and timing. Whereas live action, you're getting footage, things change, but the composer most of the time comes on towards the end of it. Once production's done, then they go into post-production, sound design, and then music starts, So for Batman, there's a scene where Oliver's at the piano drunk and singing. And I had to actually start to write that cue before I wrote anything else in the score. So you can imagine, when you start a project like that, not even knowing what, the themes are or anything like that, you just go in, you're like, all right, let's write this arrangement. And then you have to discover things as you go. So for a TV animation like this, time schedules are so much more condensed. We don't get the amount of time you would on an animated film, or you may get months and months and months or even years before you even start the process. So those are the differences. The second question, if you could remind me of that, the second part of that, just so
I think it was just like, is it do you think producing the score is more dependent on the project rather than the presentation, whether it's live action or anime? Like, because if you were doing a Superman animated movie, I wonder how your approach would have been to that, obviously.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, I have to be very inspired by the visual to actually write. I'm not one of the composers, and I'm not clowning anyone because we're all our own thing, but I'm not one to just accept work just for the sake of getting a bag. So for me, especially, and I think it's because of the luxury I have of like not only having this as, my only thing. I mean, it's very much forefront, but, I work professionally as a recording artist and performer. So I can very much decide what I want to attach myself to. And the majority of the time when I do attach to things, it's because I'm aesthetically attracted to it and I'm inspired by it and I want to write for it. So I think whether it's live action or animation, it's just a situation where I have to feel drawn to the project to want to contribute to it, more than anything else. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how did you come to find, you mentioned before that you had some influence from past Batman composers, but you also had to, you mentioned the 1920s, the Lovecraftian time period. What was it like trying to merge those two? Was it easier said than done, or was it like did you have to kind of find like gaps in both worlds to work with? What was that process like?
I think that's a very interesting question. I mean, for me, what I always do is I start with like this creative Bible playlist, of just like old school stuff, new stuff. and just listen to that religiously. And I feel like over time, just how my crazy mind starts to work, it just starts intertwining things
Sure,
between
sure.
the two. So it wasn't like a difficult process, but it's more so doing score study to understand what are the customs and courtesies used in older orchestration versus newer. And then how do you meld those two together so that it's, you know, you can clearly define, all right, we're in this period now, and now we're in the supernatural plane, which the movie definitely exploits, you know.
Yeah.
So but no, I don't think it was a difficult process. I think Sam helped with that too, because there were definitely times where he said, okay, I really like where this is going, but we need more of that, you know, modern edge here. So let's bring in that big Hans Zimmer, you know,
Yeah,
moment.
sure.
And then, you know, then we can mix the elements of the period stuff with that. So then you create this mosaic of like, what time period are we in? You know,
Yes.
kind of thing. That's kind of
Yeah.
how the score feels, you know, like
Mhm,
you just, it's very different, I feel, than
mhm,
most Batman scores.
mhm, mhm. Sure. So, kind of switching gears a little bit, can you tease any new projects that you're working on, either animate or live action, or live performances that you have maybe booked that are coming down the pike, that maybe fans of yours now just discovering you might be able to take part in and enjoy?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, this past, I don't know, there's a lot that's been happening on performance side. When I was mixing the Batman score for release, I was actually recording on at Fox Studios on Transformers
Oh, wow.
for the past 2 weeks. So trying to balance that was interesting, but we did it. And
Sure.
then other playing things was I've been performing with Bjork at Coachella.
Wow.
She's doing her concerts there. So we did a concert last Sunday. We have one more this Sunday. And I have a concert commission for the National Orchestra Institute for a string quartet for a group called Dubay,
Mhm.
made up of excellent musicians from all over the country. I mean, some of them are, you know, principals in the Philadelphia Orchestra, concert soloists, LA Phil musicians. Um, and I'm also writing the music for an upcoming network TV animated series, which I can't say what the name is. But
Okay.
yeah, lots of things going on. I'm just kind of, you know, trying to keep everything together.
And balance it, right? Yeah, trying to make
Yeah,
sure
you
everything.
know.
Gotcha. So you got to work on a lot of really great franchises so far. I mean, we were just talking about Batman, and you just mentioned Transformers. I read that you also, got to do some stuff maybe with Avatar, which is a big deal. I mean, so what are some dream properties that you would like to work on down the road? And are there any maybe dream collaboratists that you'd love to work with sometime in the near future?
I think let's see. I mean, I have a little list of people that I would love to work with. I mean, I would love to work with Ava DuVernay. I think she's like a visionary and
Mhm.
things. She just creates projects that are kind of timeless and touches on issues that need to be, you know, talked about. And also James Cameron, but he's locked.
Sure.
He's got his guy. I mean, I've been such a huge fan of James Horner scores. It really has shaped a lot of how I write. And I just feel like that's the sound that he loves. And I feel like I could emulate that very well just because he's so much in my ear, you know?
Sure.
Um, I would say Barry Jenkins as well, just for bringing Black experience to the forefront. I think that's very important, specifically LGBTQ issues with Moonlight. I'm part of that community, and it's rarely seen that, you know, LGBT cinema needs, personally, I think, a little help in the production quality, and he did a
Sure.
very good job with that, music and visually. Um, and studios, Lucasfilms, I would love it.
Yes.
Lucasfilms, Marvel, Disney, Pixar. I'd love to do more with DC animation. Um, and yeah, I mean, I've also put here Alfonso Cuarón.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, Gravity and Children of Men. I just really love epic type of cinematic experiences. So anyone in that genre who likes to produce things that's very thought provoking, inspiring, and just visually outstanding, I'd love to create a marriage there because I feel like we could do some good work together.
Gotcha. So last question, just to kind of I hope I don't hit a nerve with this one, but
No,
what is your take on AI's influence in music production? I'm sure you've heard someone recently just took basically made a Drake song but from scratch. He did Drake's lyrics, he did Drake's voice, even it almost sounded identical. Like you wouldn't even known, I don't think, that was, maybe to you because you have the trained ear for it, but to a layman like me, it was pretty close, sort of a thing. So what's your take on the rise of that technology? Are you are you cognizant of it? Are you thinking about it? What's your take on it?
So interesting. It's like this has been asked several times, and I
Okay.
I feel like my answer kind of changes sometimes, but I would say my answer today would be I think it's an excellent tool for creativity, as a starting place to like really figure out where you want to go with things. I think it's great. I don't think it's a great way to introduce material that says that it's your original material, because it's basing things off of pre-existing copywritten material,
Sure.
So there's a lot of sample libraries that are loop-based type of things where once you buy the license, you can use them and add whatever you want on top of it. So I feel like it could be a situation like that where AI could be used to just kind of create the sonic palette that you can experiment with and further expound upon, But as far as using it as a utility to put out original music that you basically tell it what to do, it does its thing, and then you slap your name on it, I don't know how much, credibility that deserves. Because it's such a process to create music, and it's not just a situation where you sit down and tell a computer to do something and it spits it out and you slap your name.
Gotcha.
You have to like really deep, go deep within yourself and research things and test things out and throw things away, and like that's part of the human creative process. So I feel like if we start relying on artificial intelligence to put that emotional element on it, isn't that taking away the emotion? Like
Sure.
having a computer generate things, it takes away that human element. And I think as composers, we try to emulate that with our sample libraries, but that's why we push so hard to have live musicians record it, because when different variations of vibrato and changing pitch and how musicians listen to each other on the stage, you can't capture that. That's something you have to capture live. And I feel like if that's the sound we want to continue to have in film and TV, then that live element has to be a necessary thing to keep us, grounded,
Gotcha. Yeah.
on a
Makes
human
sense.
level.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a musician,
but I have
but
a little one. Yeah, just
just a little biased, but
yeah,
I hear the difference,
Sure.
you hear the difference. And but like I said, Chat GPT is amazing because it speeds up the process of things in everyday life that would take you forever. I mean, it's an excellent way to come up with captions for your IG posts, for Twitter posts, for biographies, whatever, spitting something in there and see what it comes out and editing it and making it yours. I think those are things that are good because it frees up your time so you can create, But if it comes to a place where you're only creating using artificial intelligence, that's a little bit of an issue for me. So
Gotcha. All right, Stefan. Well, hey, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me this afternoon. Again, congratulations on your score, Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham. Soundtrack is releasing tomorrow. And congratulations again. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the week. I'm looking forward to hopefully running into you again and working on whatever future projects you're working on. Hopefully it's animated.
Yeah, let's keep in touch. You have my info. I'd love
you got
to.
it. Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Yep.